On today's episode of the There Is a Floodlight That Never Goes Out podcast, me, Ed and Will chat to Joe Crann about everything ranging from his time in South Africa, attending the 2010 and 2014 World Cups, the Bafana Bafana team, the South African Premier Division, Percy Tau, and more onto English football, his beloved Sheffield Wednesday and what it's been like covering them this season. I think I speak on behalf of all of the lads here when I say that this was the most fun we've had recording an episode yet. Stick around for the entire 1 hour and 10 minutes and you'll enjoy every last second of it. Hello and welcome back to the There Is a Floodlight That Never Goes Out podcast. As usual, I'm joined by Ed and Will, and I'm delighted to say today we're joined by Joe Crann. How are you, Joe?
All good, thank you very much. All good. Love the name of the podcast, by the way.
Cheers. Love the Smiths, hate Morrissey. First question then. Did you always want to be in the journalism industry?
No, I think like so many of us, I wanted to be a professional footballer. That's was kind of where it all starts. And I mean, I was quite, I suppose, lucky is the right word. I realised at the age of probably 12, 13 that I was never going to be good enough to play at any sort of decent level. So sort of the way my teenage brain worked was, well, what's the best way I can get into the game without actually playing it? And the written word and sort of English was something I was always quite good at. Something came quite easily to me. So, it's a lucky situation to be in that by the time I was 13, 14 years old, I already knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to sort of follow that up, what were your first sort of steps into journalism?
So I did quite a bit when I was in secondary school. I did some sort of worked for a little Sheffield it was not even a newspaper, a little Sheffield magazine called The Cube. I did some bits and bats for them, and you spend your time writing around to different people, trying to get a bit of advice, a bit of work experience, all that kind of stuff. But then I went on to do media studies in English at college, and then from there I did my NCTJ, which is the journalism certificate. I did that when I was sort of 18, 19. And the plan was to go off to university and study to be a journalist. And then an opportunity in South Africa came about, and the university thing just never really happened after that.
Yeah. So how did that opportunity come about then? Because we mentioned this to you off air. It's not a normal sort of pathway to go to Africa, is it?
No. And if you'd asked me, when I was 17, 18, if I was at some point going to spend almost a decade living in South Africa, probably would have laughed in your face, to be honest, because it was never part of the plan. But basically, what happened was the short story is I went over for the World Cup in 2010, and I did some voluntary work out there, and I was basically asked if I'd be a guinea pig for a work experience thing with a newspaper called Soccer Laduma, and Soccer Laduma is one of the biggest selling football publications in the world, actually, if you look at actual numbers of sales and stuff. And I went over there and I did a month's work experience. And after I'd done my month, the guy who owned the paper, he said, "Look, we'd love to have you involved. Would you fancy going to work for us?" And I had a whole year-long trip planned where I was going all over the place on a horrible. The gap year name has been ruined now by many videos online, but that's what I was doing. But I took some time out, and so I sort of said thanks for the offer, but I've got this trip to do, and I'll see where I'm at when I'm done. And then about probably halfway through my trip, I got a message from Peter, who's the owner, and he said, "Look, we weren't joking. We'd love to have you on board if it's something you'd want to do." So basically, I finished my trip. I deferred from university for a year and thought, you know what, I'll go spend a year in South Africa. See how it goes. And then I met my now fiance, and the job went well, and I moved from Cape Town to Johannesburg and started going to tournaments all over the world. And 10 years down the line, I was still there.
Yeah.
So, Joe, if I just ask, so obviously when you were in South Africa, what was kind of your day-to-day role? What were you doing? Just like simply reporting on different sports, or?
No, I fully sort of threw myself into It's called the Premier Soccer League, which is the
Mm.
the South African league system. They've got the ABSA Premiership. It's the STV Premiership now, but when I was working there, it was the ABSA Premiership, and the second division, and then covering Bafana Bafana, which is the national team, and Banyana, which is the female national team. So I was covering all of that really. I spent a lot of time sort of tracking down and covering a lot of the South African boys who were playing in Europe and around the world. You know, I was lucky enough to, by the time sort of the latter part of my time in South Africa, when I'd built up quite a good name for myself, I was lucky enough to sort of travel around. Went to watch some of the South African boys playing in France and places like that, and it was quite a broad job in a South African football sense, but it was very much South African football. I wasn't really reporting on anything European. It was effectively like learning a new language, to be honest. You know, I knew bits and bats about the South African game. You know, it's weird for me now thinking, you know, I'm now friends with like Lucas Radebe and, you know, and Sean Bartlett and people like that, and that's mad because as a kid they were people that I grew up watching, and so I knew a little bit about South African football. But yeah, when I moved there, it was like learning a whole new language because there's a whole league system of players that I didn't know, and it was quite a challenge. It was something that I think was really good for me because it gave me an entirely different perspective on where football is at on a global scale, I suppose.
Joe, you mentioned earlier about obviously the 2010 World Cup was in South Africa. Did that really have a profound impact on South African football?
I think in many ways it did. You look at where South African football is at, and commercially the league is ridiculous. You know, the quality of it in terms of where they're at on a football basis is something that if you ask a lot of people in South Africa, just split opinion. The way I've always said it was it's nowhere near as bad as what a lot of people say it is, and it's nowhere near as good as what other people say it is. It's kind of just at a good solid level as a league, but there's a lot of legacy from the World Cup in terms of the money that went around. But that being said, there's also a lot of money that's been wasted, and you've unfortunately got quite a lot of the white elephants that they call them in South Africa of stadiums and things like that. But one thing I will say is that World Cup was really special. It was the first one that I'd had chance to go to, and I'm probably a little bit biased because, you know, I was a 20-year-old and I basically just partied for a month and a half while working a little bit in between. But I think the thing that really made the South African World Cup special for me, and it's sort of been reinforced since I've been to ones afterwards. When South Africa went out, it was almost just like, who cares? We weren't going to win it anyway. And it was almost like the South Africans were determined to give such a good account of the country and make sure everybody felt so welcome that even when South Africa went out, it just continued. And, you know, I was in Brazil, I was in Rio I was actually at the game when Brazil got hammered in the 2014 World Cup. And it just felt like the World Cup died that day. And it was similar in Russia. When Russia got knocked out, you know, it loses some of its spark. And that, I think that is it's natural because you lose the support of the home nation. Whereas with South Africa, it just continued, and they started supporting Ghana, and yeah, it was wicked. It was such an amazing time to sort of get introduced to South Africa. And look, don't get me wrong, South Africa during the World Cup is not like South Africa day to day. A lot, the day to day living in South Africa is very, very different compared to what it was like during the World Cup. But I think there's a lot of good that came from the World Cup, and some not so good stuff. But from a large extent, I think the biggest thing for South Africa during the World Cup was, you know, you get all these people who will tell you it's so dangerous to go to South Africa and you should never go. And people are saying, yeah, I'd never go. It's too dangerous for me. And then the World Cup goes there and everyone's like, yeah, it's fine. We'll go for that. And after that, you know, I've never met anybody who's been to South Africa who doesn't want to go back. And that, you know, the World Cup played a big part in that because people will forget their fears. They'll forget sort of the prejudices and the ideas that they have in their head for football. And I think there's a lot of good came from purely from a tourism perspective for South Africa, because all of a sudden people let the guards down a little bit and went somewhere that they maybe wouldn't normally have gone.
Yeah. And you talked earlier about you having to learn pretty much a new language in terms of South African football. What's the
Yeah.
South African football scene actually like? Because in England, certainly, I think we only really know Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, and that's because they're on FIFA.
Yeah.
So what's it like over there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting league. So you've obviously got those two, which are size-wise the biggest teams in the country. I've been lucky enough to go to many Soweto derbies, and it really is. It's a sight to behold. Like, just before I left, before I moved back home, my mum and dad came over to visit, and it was the first time where they'd come and it had lined up with a derby, and I managed to get us a box sorted and took my mum and my dad. There's 90,000 people packed into FNB Stadium, and there's no segregation there with fans. So the Chiefs and Pirates fans are all just kind of mixed up, and the vuvuzelas are going, and the singing, and there's dancing, and it's just, yeah, it's wicked. It really is. Like the Soweto Derby is something that I would genuinely recommend to every single football fan in the world. If you can get to a Soweto Derby at some point in your life, you got to do it. It really is special. But there's a lot more to the league than that. There's a team called Mamelodi Sundowns now who are Sundowns are just, they're huge now. The success of that football club. They had a guy called Patrice Motsepe who's been the chairman for many years. He threw money at it, and they built just an absolute monster of a football team. They had Johan Nieskins as manager at one point. If you remember him, played for Holland. Didn't quite go so well for him when he was there. But then after Nieskins left, they appointed a guy called Pitso Masimani, and Pitso's now the manager of Al Ahly in Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
But Pitso turned Sundowns into a major force. They won the CAF Champions League. They won a lot of domestic trophies as well. They went off to the Club World Cup and all that kind of thing. And now Sundowns are just, they are the team to beat in South African football. And Patrice Motsepe, who was chairman, he's now on his way to be the president of the African Football Association. So, he's moving on to, Patrice has done a lot, not just for Sundowns, but South African football in general. It's his name on the on one of the leagues a little bit further down the rung, the ABC Motsepe League. So he's pushed a lot of money into South African football and done a lot of good for it. But it's a really interesting scene, because South Africa is a huge country, and you've got the sort of the stalwarts who've been there forever, like Chiefs and Pirates, and Sundowns have been around for a while. You've got newer teams like SuperSport United, who won quite a lot of trophies back in the day, and now you've got, I suppose, you've got a few young upstarts, really. The team called Cape Town City, who had Benny McCarthy as the manager for a little while. Cape Town City they're an old club, but they disappeared for a long time, and then they were sort of brought back to life a few years back. And they're sort of classed as one of the cool clubs who, the big push on social media for them and all that kind of stuff. But it's a really interesting scene, just because of the way that South African football is. They have a very distinct sort of identity and way of playing. Do yourself a favor and just go online and search for Kasi Flavor. It's Kasi and then Flavor, either as you would spell it, or FLAVA, and it's basically township football, and a lot of the South African, I suppose that a lot of the South African way of playing is portrayed in the Kasi Flavor, and it's just, I'm sure you've seen videos online of the guys like dancing on the ball and stuff like that, and it's like completely unnecessary, but it's done for purely entertainment value. It can be quite frustrating if you're watching a game and it's 0-0 and guys are doing that, but it's just part of the South African DNA, and they've built a really, really good product there in terms of what the Super Sport, which is like the African version of Sky Sports, and Super Sport have done an incredible job marketing the league alongside the PSL, and there's all sorts going on there, and I think it's a league that has the potential to be absolutely massive if it keeps going at the growth that it is, and there's a lot of money in it now as well.
Not trying to like sort of throw a blanket over every club and box them into sort of one pool. What level would you say the South African league's at if you were to compare it to a division in England?
It's really, I've had a lot of people ask me that, and it's really tough to say. I think if you take sort of Sundowns at their peak, I reckon they'd probably be sort of looking Championship, somewhere around there. But there's also teams in the PSL, sorry, in the Abs Premiership or GSTV Premiership as now, who I think are closer to League Two teams. So it's quite difficult to say, and like you said about blanketing it, you can't really, because it's quite ranging, and there's quite a lot of big difference between the top teams and the bottom teams for me.
Yeah.
And the better way to do it was from a Wednesday perspective, for instance. I think if Wednesday were to go into the PSL, I reckon they would be at sort of a top 4 at least club there, pushing for the title every year. And again, it's a very easy thing to say, but we'll never know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, sort of, how is English football viewed over in South Africa? Is it popular, or is it sort of a
Massively
forgotten
so,
thing?
yeah. No, massively so. To the point where it's in some ways it's a bit problematic how big it is. Because the South African game kind of gets forgotten. Like sometimes, and it's really sad for me. Sometimes not sometimes. Most of the time, it's easier to watch a European Champions League game than it is to watch an African Champions League game. Just because of the TV rights are a lot more readily available. You obviously find it's mainly the big boys over there. We've got a lot of Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea fans. It is getting better. You find that a lot of people have 2 teams over there, so they'll have a team they support in South Africa, and then they'll have a European or an English team as well. But it's the Premier League is massive, and it's why I don't know if you've seen anything about it. There's a guy called Percy Tau who plays for Brighton.
Yes, yeah.
And every time they mention his name on their social media, it just explodes. And that, I think, is a sign of where South Africa's at. And they just they want Percy to do well so desperately, because it is if he can succeed in the Premier League, it's a sign that they're back on the right track. Because there was a period back in the day when you had the Sean Bartletts and your Mark Fishers and Lucas Kharebi and a little bit more recently Stephen Pienaar and those guys, and for so long there's just been no South Africans in the Premier League, and they're desperate to sort of to change that. And there is a generation coming through now of either South African born players or South African heritage players who are playing in Premier League clubs now. Someone like Kanya Leshabela, who I've spoken to and has got a very, very thick British accent. But Leshabela is a South African name. His family's from there, and he's played for the youth teams in South Africa. So there's the Premier League is still for many seen as, I suppose, the holy grail of where the Africans want their players to be playing.
Obviously, while you've been out in South Africa, you've been to some amazing events. Who are some of the best people you've met while out in South Africa?
If I include the trips that I did while I was working in South Africa, I met Cesc Fabregas, and he was brilliant. Fabregas was just so genuine and lovely. And as an example with Fabregas, I asked him about, there was a young player called Lyle Foster, who was a South African boy who joined Monaco at 17 years old from Orlando Pirates, and he was in the youth setup there, and he was sort of trying to make his way. And I asked Fabregas about him. I expected to kind of get pied off a little bit and just get the old, he's a talented young player, and the same thing that you could say for any player, and it makes no difference. But he actually took the time, and he knew who Lyle was, and he was talking about how a player had just got injured, and it was a big chance for Lyle to try and kick on. And I love that. Like, it's just so nice to have someone who cares, really. Who doesn't just want to say just fob you off. But I've been really lucky. I did some work with Marcel Desailly at one point, which was good because he's a character. I can't, and I've mentioned him a couple of times already, I can't talk about people without talking about Lucas. Lucas Halaby is genuinely one of the nicest people you could ever wish to meet. He is like he'll message me. Obviously, he knows I'm a Wednesday and
he played for Leeds.
He played for Leeds, and he's like a god there. And we obviously used to give each other a bit of banter about it, but like Lucas will still message me every now and again just to see how I am, even though I've left now. And he's a cracking human being. Short ball, that's brilliant as well. But I've been quite lucky to sort of speak to varying different people. But a lot of the time, when you get to the international stuff, it's done via email, it's done via phone, all that kind of stuff, rather than actually getting to meet people. Dwight York was a good laugh. He came over to do some punditry work in South Africa at one point, and Dwight was good.
Very good.
So you talked about some of the experiences you had. I had a look through your Instagram, and I was very impressed about the people you've met. But I saw that you had dinner with Ian Wright once. I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, he's brilliant. Like, I was just thinking when you asked me that question, there's so many that I will have just completely forgotten because, well, firstly, I haven't left the house properly in about a year, so it all feels like so long ago. But yeah, Ian was brilliant. I did some basically a friend of mine was doing some work with Ian, and he messaged me, and he was just like, "I'm going for dinner with Ian Wright. Do you want to come for a drink?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll drop everything that I'm doing to come to that. That's absolutely no hassle at all." And yeah, he was another one. He's just very, very genuine. The Ian Wright that you see on TV is exactly like he is in real life. He's just that bubbly kind of character who's got time for people and is more than happy to, just share his stories with you. And I was with him when his FIFA Ultimate Team card got announced, and he was buzzing. He was really happy about that. But yeah, Ian Wright was great. But you if you've looked through my Instagram, you're probably a better place to tell me who I've met and who I haven't met, to be honest.
On the thumbnail for our YouTube video, we've got a picture of you with Patrick Kluivert. So,
that was good. Patrick was good because he's got quite a big connection to South Africa. He was the picture you've seen, I'm sure, is the one where he's got the band on with the armband. Oh no, it's not. It's the picture just me and him, right? Basically, the reason I started talking to him is he wears a wristband which has got Nelson Mandela's inmate number on it, and he wears that all the time. Obviously, Mandela's an inspiration for a lot of people. But yeah, he was a very nice guy as well. Very good English.
Yeah, I played over here for Newcastle, didn't he?
Yeah.
The early 2000s. So probably moving on now to the Wednesday sort of side of things. What was it like being able to cover your boyhood club?
I thought it was going to be all fun and games, and then and this season happened. It's been carnage, hasn't it? It really has. I don't think I was mentally prepared for just what goes on at this football club. In my head, when I took the job, it was like, amazing. I'm going to go cover my boyhood club. I'm going to go, watch games at Hillsborough. It's going to be full of people, and they're going to be singing all of the songs that I grew up with and all that kind of stuff. And with the points deduction, with the horrible season it's been, with the lack of fans, with everything that's come with COVID, it's been pretty much nothing like I expected it to be. Right. I still, it's still amazing for me to be covering my boyhood club, and I've loved the year that I've had. I think, there's been a few highlights. Bournemouth away was wicked.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the video of the goal on Sky, and you can hear someone shouting in the background. That's me. Which is not very professional of me. But it had been a long season, and we just scored a late winner at Bournemouth, and I couldn't help myself. But yeah, it's like I say, it's been really nice, sort of getting to know my club a little bit better, and I suppose getting to know the ins and outs of it all. But obviously, it would have been nicer to do it in different circumstances. It genuinely makes me really sad when I go to Hillsborough and there's nobody else there. The last game was horrible in that sense, because I just know what Hillsborough would have been like with Wednesday 5-0 up out of nowhere, and yeah, it just would have been amazing. And like I say, for me, it is really sad that I've been to so many games this season, and the few high points we have had, there's been no one but myself and a handful of others there to sort of enjoy it.
Yeah. Joe, you're talking earlier about sort of, promising South African players, and I remember Wednesday were linked with Bongani Zungu. I think was it in the Carlos era, and then am I right thinking he went to Rangers this season and hasn't really kicked on? Do you think he's one of those players that sort of, if things go his way, sort of can crack the Premier League, perhaps?
Possibly. One thing that Bongs has got going for him is his physique. He's unlike you find a lot of South African players who are really quick, really technically gifted, but obviously you can't really build on your physique. You're either a big person or you're not, and South Africans aren't necessarily big people. But Bongs has got that in his locker because he is just, like I say, a naturally big person. The thing with Carlos was interesting because obviously he was playing in Portugal at the time at Guimarães.
Yeah.
And it never got any further than just Carlos had kept an eye on him, really. And I don't think he would have got a work permit to come to England at the time, anyway. To be honest, because obviously the work permit rules, I know they've changed recently, but they're pretty strict. But yeah, he's certainly got that potential to do that. But whether that'll happen for him or not is. Yeah, it's just a matter of seeing what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a sort of player that ends up going into the Middle East or something like that. Now, I think a lot of players, when you go somewhere like at Rangers, for instance, it's been tough for him.
Yeah. Well, right. I think he broke COVID lockdown rules. Did he breach them?
Yeah. There was a whole thing about that, and I play devil's advocate on it a little bit. I think it's very difficult because you're moving to a new country where it's absolutely Baltic, and you're stuck in a hotel, and you can't see anybody. You don't know anybody there. You can't have any sort of social life. And when I say social life, I don't mean like partying and that. I just mean in anything. You're literally stuck in a hotel, going to the changing rooms. You can't get to know anybody off the field. So I think it's all very, and like I say, this isn't just with him. I just feel like it's a general thing for anybody doing anything at this time of life. As a footballer, you want to start to build relationships with your teammates, and you can't just do that on the ground. You can't just do that at training. You need to have those team building exercises and all that kind of stuff, and they've just he's not had a chance to do that.
Yeah. You talked about work permits as well. Now Tau, Brighton signed him in 2018, but then he's been on loan in Belgium.
Yeah.
What sort of could you explain possibly how the work permits ruled changed? In order for him to sort of come to the South Coast at last.
Brexit. Long and short, that's
is it
Brexit.
simple as that?
The obviously when Brexit came around, they had to rethink the rules and how it worked. And before, it was a complicated system before, and it's still a relatively complicated system now. Basically, the fact that he was playing he'd been playing in the Champions League with Club Bruges before, it gave him the points that he needed to get in on the new rules. So that's why they did it when they did it, and cut his loan short at Anderlecht, because they needed to do it at that point for him to get the work permit. But it's like I say, they changed the rules completely because of Brexit, and it now is a situation where the rules are slightly more lenient in terms of hitting the points you need to. It's a points-based system, so in order to hit the points, it's a little bit more lenient now. But you're fighting against everybody. Yeah. So before it was stricter, but you weren't having to battle it out with guys from France and Italy and Spain. Whereas now it's like I say, it's a little bit more lenient, but you're now going up against anybody who's not British.
Yeah, I mean, do you think Tau will be successful for the Seagulls or not?
I really hope so. I think Percy's got a lot in his locker, and for me, one thing that makes Percy stand out is his sort of attitude and his desire to be the best that he can be. I mean, he was a bit of a late bloomer in South Africa. He was playing for Sundowns, and he got shipped out on loan a couple of times because they weren't sure he was up to it, and then he just kind of burst onto the scene, and he could have stayed in South Africa and earned more than enough money. You've got guys in South Africa earning substantial sums. It's not like you don't need to leave anymore. It's not like back in the day where you had to leave to make a decent living. You can live like a king now if you play for one of the top teams in South Africa. But Percy's dream was always to go bigger than that, and he always wanted to get to as high as he possibly could. And whether Percy will do it at Brighton, I don't know. I think he's got what it takes to play in the Premier League. I just think he needs a period to get used to how Brighton play, for instance.
Yeah.
And given the situation they find themselves in this year, it's a tough time to try and break through.
Yeah. Yeah. Just sort of moving on to Wednesday. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Tom and Will are both Barnsley fans, so hopefully they don't give us too much stick. Obviously, there's one. I mean, is it simple? There's one obvious question. Have Wednesday left themselves too much to do, in your opinion?
I think so.
Yeah.
The one that killed me was Luton.
Yeah.
I was always sort of remaining optimistic all the way through, and I just don't think that this group of players should be where they are. Do you know what I mean? Like on paper, obviously, I look at the way this, the players available, and if you look man for man at other teams across the league, just shouldn't be where they are. And I always thought that quality, I suppose, would be enough. I was never under the impression that we were going to be flying high or anything like that, but I just thought that they had enough to finish, say, 20th, 21st.
Yeah.
The Luton one really knocked me for six. And I think it was because of how genuinely good they were in the first half. And it just felt like when that first goal went in, I remember saying to the guys I was at the game with, I was like, we're going to lose this.
It was typical Wednesday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And they've just been so fragile this season. And that was, bringing it onto a bit of a happy note. That's what I think was most impressive for me with a Cardiff game was in the second half, at 3-0, I was genuinely worried that if they got one back that we'd at least draw that game.
Definitely.
Because I just felt like they were just gonna crumble again. And the fact that they not only held on but added to it, I think is a testament to the work that the Darren Moore's done. And sorry, lads, to mention the Barnsley game. That was an example of it. Because, I mean, you can let us have that. You've been way better than us this season. So,
Yeah, you were very good that day.
We just didn't show up at all.
But I think that game, there was another one like that. And again, I think it's down to Darren Moore and what he's tried to instill into him is when Barnsley got one back, I was just like, it's happening again. This could happen again, and they're gonna bottle it. And the fact that they were able to hold on against a team like Barnsley, who have been so good and so been really enjoyable to watch this season, and they were a very, very tough team to play against. And the fact that they were able to hold on, and Barnsley really threw it at them towards the end of the game. And I think that is, The Barnsley game was one of those where I watched that game and I just thought, if and when we go down, Darren Moore can get us back up again. And 100%. I think that's that's the crux of it for me, is that if Wednesday go down, it has got absolutely nothing to do with Darren Moore. If we stay up, we need to get a statue built of him, because this is ridiculous. Like, we're in a very, like, he took on a completely thankless job. And, you know, I just hope that the long-term plan is that, like I say, if and when Wednesday go down, that Darren Moore is the man to do the rebuild, because I can't get over, and I think I've said it on Twitter, I can't get over how liked this man is.
Yeah.
He talked to everybody, and literally no one has got a bad word to say about him. And I know people say, obviously, if you're doing press conferences and that, they're never going to say anything bad. Like, I never expect to go onto a Zoom press conference with a Wednesday player and then badmouth the manager. It'll never happen. But it's the stuff that you speak to people about behind the scenes, and on a personal level as well as on a footballing level. You know, you speak to people at the club and the efforts that he's gone to with everybody there, just like making sure to learn first names with everybody, whether you're a assistant manager or whether you're cleaning the cars out front. Like, he wants to know everybody, and he wants everybody to feel like they're part of something. I think that's why when the players talk about why he's the right man to take him forward, I think it all resonates with me.
It's all about sort of rebuilding that connection between fan base and club, and I think credit to Chansiri, that appointment has definitely done that, and it's brought a bit of optimism to the club.
Yeah, definitely.
So obviously with Darren Moore, then, do you think the aim is, because traditionally Wednesday have signed sort of proven talent with a bit of experience, whereas Darren Moore, what he's done at Doncaster is get young talent from Premier League teams, etc., on loan. Do you think he'll bring that sort of mentality to Wednesday, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, the nice thing with Darren Moore is that he's got those connections that teams really want to send their players to work with him.
Yeah.
You had that at Donny, and you look at the teams in the Premier League, and they really like the idea of their players going to work with Darren Moore, because people can see the good work that he's done. And at Wednesday, that will become double-barreled, because all of a sudden he's now got no disrespect to Doncaster Rovers, but he's now got a big name club on top of that.
Yeah.
And I think that if Wednesday go down, for instance, playing for Sheffield Wednesday in League One under Darren Moore is a big draw card. If you're a Premier League club and you're looking to send your players to League One, or even if you're looking to just send your players out of the Premier League, I think that is it's something that a lot of players and a lot of teams would be very, very open to. And I'm sure there will be an element of experience, because I think it's just the nature of it. You need experienced players. You can't just have a team of kids and nothing else around them. But yeah, I don't expect that he will change tack completely. I do think that he will still go down that route, and it's probably the more pragmatic approach to do at the minute anyway, because I can't see Wednesday going out and splashing the cash anywhere. That would seem, firstly, it would seem responsible, and I don't think that it's something that Chansiri is looking to do. And secondly, it's not been that way for a couple of years now. The days of Wednesday spending millions on players is long gone, and you look at the sort of transfers that they've made over the last couple of years. Dominic Orfa springs to mind. I think they paid 200 grand for him, which obviously it's very sad that he's now out for the year. But yeah, I mean, he's a player that now, if he was fit and if he'd had a full season under his belt, I reckon you're talking 3, 4, 5 million for a player like Dominic Orfa. So
yeah, 100%.
They're definitely the kind of signings that Wednesday need to go down, and I think that, like I say, I think Darren Moore's a big draw card for teams when looking at that from now on.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, it seems like the last sort of 3 summer transfer windows, well, obviously the one under Bruce, then he went to Newcastle, the last one under Monk, and now this one under Moore, they've also been branded as these huge rebuild windows. Obviously something isn't going right if it's a yearly occurrence, but just how crucial do you think this summer's going to be with all those players out of contract? Sort of who do you envisage staying and who do you possibly see leaving?
It's an impossible question because it really depends on what happens.
Yeah.
And that's the terrifying thing at the minute is that there are players at that football club now, rightly or wrongly, that will stay with Wednesday and would want to stay at Wednesday if they are a Championship football club. If they're League One, I'm not so sure. And that is completely understandable. Do you know what I mean? Like, you look at someone like a Tom Lees, for instance. Tom Lees, for me anyway, has been probably Wednesday's player of the season this year. I think he's been the most consistent, performer for Wednesday throughout the course of this year.
Yeah.
And it's not been great, so the bar's it's not massively high, but I think Tom's been brilliant for Wednesday this year, and he'd walk into another Championship club. It's not like he's going to struggle to get somewhere. So I just don't see how players like Tom Lees, like Adam Reach, are going down to League One with Sheffield Wednesday. I just don't see it.
I agree. I think my only slight, not reservation about Tom Lees, is that under Moore, obviously we've seen a sort of pass it out from the back style, and
it's not his game, is it?
No, it isn't, and that's my only reservation. Another player who's, well, I think divided the fan base is an understatement, is Joey Pelopessi, and he's a man that I see you tweet very positively about, and I agree with a lot of what you say. I think he's the most underrated player in the squad and undervalued. So what are your thoughts on Joey?
Firstly, I think Joey would be a tremendous footballer in League One. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Whether he'd want to come down, I don't know, because like I say, I know he'll have options. I would be very surprised if there's not Championship clubs keeping an eye on him. Going back to Holland, I've heard there's interest in Turkey and Belgium as well. Like I say, I don't know if he'd want to stick around. But for me, the thing with Joey is that I'm sure by his own admission as well, he's a limited footballer. He is not Barry Bannon. No. That's not his game. The thing that bugs me with the way people go off at Joey is like people always go on about, we just want players who care. We just want players who give everything for the shirt. And then the other guy who literally gives everything for the shirt every week, and then they want to hammer him and tell him he's useless. It's like, make your mind up, lads.
It's hypocrisy at the finest, isn't it? I think exactly. for Joey, sort of and this is where I feel for him, is Jos signed him, and when you think about who he had as that defensive midfielder, when Jos signed him, you're talking Hutchinson, who, let's face it, he's better on the ball than Joey, but Joey wasn't ever really brought in to do Hutchinson's role, and I feel like everyone assumes Joey has to, when he gets the ball, move it through the phases and not just be that solid rock at 100%, the base of midfield.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a general problem with. I'm not going to say it's a Wednesday night problem because it's not. It's a football fan problem. We have a similar thing now with Adam Reach. People saying Nesh is out of tackles. That's not what he's there for.
I agree.
If you're wanting Adam Reach to go into all your 50-50s, then your expectations of him are wrong. Like you don't sign players to do a certain job and then annoyed when they don't do something else. Like you say with Joey, people get annoyed at him that he's not making 3, 4, 5 key passes every game. He's there to mop up. That's his job.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think you can't expect. It's almost like judging Kylian Mbappe on his ability to tackle. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just a nonsense. I think that we have this idea of at Wednesday. The problem is that I can't remember who I was talking to about it the other day. Sheffield Wednesday footballers currently are still being hurt by Chris Waddle, by David Hurst, by all that generation, because in a lot of fans' heads, we know where we were. Do you know what I mean? We know the sort of player that we had back in the day. And I think it's quite difficult to come to terms with the fact that we're not signing those players anymore. Because we are a sleeping giant, sure, but we're a sleeping giant that's been asleep for a long time. It's
in danger of being asleep too long as well. That's
exactly.
Falling into a coma.
Yeah, full on. It's not sleeping anymore, is it? But I think that the expectations need to be altered, really.
Yeah. And that's sort of the impossible task, though, isn't it? I mean, obviously, I grew up way after the likes of Waddle and Hurst, and I've grown up with your Forestieres and Bannons and stuff. So I can accept Championship mediocrity a lot more than quite rightly other fans can, because that's all I've ever experienced. That in League One. So no, it's sort of how do you shift those aspirations, and unfortunately. Well, I mean, again, that small taste of semi-success with the 15, 16, 16, 17 season, again, that's just fueled another 10 years of, we have to be at that level.
Completely. Yeah. And I think that, I was sort of watching Bannon and Forestieri in their pomp, when the 2016-17 season,
and magical.
2017-18, they were genuinely the best duo I'd seen play for Wednesday since Kenny or Carbone. It was so good to watch, and it's difficult to keep up those standards. And I always felt quite sorry for Carlos, because when you lose one playoff final, it's hard to sort of get the boys up again. To then lose a playoff semi against a team that you're better than, because we were better than Huddersfield on pound for pound, we were better than Huddersfield that year. To lose that on penalties, having improved, because we improved, I think we were fourth that year.
We were,
and to deal with that double blow over 2 seasons, and then the financial hammer that comes with it, because they had thrown everything at doing that.
Yeah,
the house does start to fall down a little bit, and like I say, those expectations are there. And then the sort of player you have to sign changes, and I think there just needs to be, and I've said it before, I think there needs to be a bit of a reality check, really, in terms of where we're actually at. And if Wednesday go down next season, if we go down and we have a window where we don't sign anybody that anybody knows,
that's
but the Darren Moore signings,
my worry is that's going to get toxic, though, Joe. That's my worry.
Exactly, and that's I was going to say, if we sign players that people don't know, but they're Darren Moore signings and he's got what he wants, just let the guy work.
100%.
Let the guy work and let him do his thing, because we have tried, we've gone down the tried and tested route many times, and it's not quite worked out. And given the conversations I've had with Darren and about Darren, I completely think he is the right person. For me, he's the most exciting appointment at Wednesday in years.
Yeah.
Just because of everything about him. He just seems like such a
something a bit different,
bloke.
Isn't it? In terms of sort of, you look at the managers we'd had previously, and they all played a certain set style of football that I think is sort of becoming less and less effective in the Championship, as you see. And then credit to Chansiri, he's come out with Darren Moore, this more attack-minded, more Carlos-esque in sort of approach to the game.
I think it's also been really interesting with Darren. At Donny, he was quite strict on his 4-2-3-1, and he played it a lot. Whereas at Wednesday, he's come in and he's looked at what's available, and he's looked at the opposition he's gone up against, and he's shifted things around loads, trying to get to where he wants to be. And I mean, when Callum Patterson came in, for instance, everyone was like, is he going to play up front? Is he going to play right wing back? Is he going to play right back? And then it was the Barnsley game, wasn't it? When he went, I'm actually going to play him centre mid.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they just looked like a different side, really. And it's not a position that I think many. I never expected him to be playing as a centre mid.
It's working though. You know what I mean?
But he's been great.
But it's that pragmatism, obviously, with the Wednesday squad in terms of utilising every man. But then I also, what I'm really impressed with almost more, is the pragmatism in terms of each opposition. Again, I don't want to hark on about the Barnsley game because I've already done these two enough. But, against them, it was a completely different style to say against Cardiff or against Watford, which I thought we were unlucky to lose that game personally. And that's what impresses me is perhaps other managers One criticism it's just too rigid, whereas with Moore there seems this fluidity.
Yeah, and after that Barnsley game, when I was waiting down, because obviously I've seen bits of Barnsley over the course of the season, but I haven't watched every game. But when I was down there waiting for Darren to come out, some of the press were talking with, if it was someone who worked for Barnsley or someone else, but we're just saying that playing Patterson in that role and playing that formation was the perfect way to stop Barnsley. Like it was like a masterclass in how to stop Barnsley playing, and that's what I've been really impressed with. As you said, that the idea that he's not at all rigid. Like there's no rigidity to what he's doing. If he feels that he needs to change the entire formation or change the entire starting 11 to beat the opposition that they're going up against, then he'll do that. And I think that's really exciting because rigidity in the modern game is pointless.
So sort of off the pitch, I've talked about on it. Off the pitch, we all know the troubles the club's been through. This is sort of your own personal opinion. We were recently linked, not sure how tenuous the links were, but with David Webb as a possible director of football. Do you think the club should try and employ a sort of CEO or director of football, or get a higher man or woman in the club?
Me personally, definitely. Yeah. I think it's if literally nothing else but to take some strain off the chairman. 100%. Literally, if it was for no other reason other than to stop chairman having to deal with every single aspect of the football club, I think it would be useful. Genuinely, I think Wednesday are in a position where you can't have one guy doing everything. It's just not. It's not sustainable. You know, it's just running a football club. I'm not going to profess to know what I'm talking about in that sense because I don't. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I think that's one thing that I suppose we have to say when it comes to running a football club is that I've never done it, so I can't be overly critical in many ways because ultimately I don't know what I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's like me having to go to a heart surgeon for doing something differently because I don't know what they do either. But for me personally, I just think that they could do with having someone who acts as a middleman. You know, someone who's a little bit further down the pecking order than the chairman, who's got his ear, who is there at the club and works with everybody every day, and sort of knows what they need, works hand in hand with Darren Moore as the manager or whoever the manager might be at the time. I just think it could be massively beneficial. Like you say, whether it's a chief exec or whether it's a director of football, a technical director, whatever we want to call it, just somebody in that sort of middle management role who can take the strain off a little bit. But, you know, it's funny. People always say, why don't you ask this? Why don't you ask that of the chairman? People love to have a crack at us for not asking certain things, but we always ask the questions. You know, we always ask. We always ask these things.
We've had Dom on, and he said similar. You know, Dom House, and he said, if you listen to the press conferences, those questions are asked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the difference is people want us to be sounds daft. People want us to be mean. That's what I think a lot of the time.
Yeah.
They want us to just go on and have a pop, and that's not a normal human thing to do anyway. Like, why would you do that in any situation in life? Like, I'm not an aggressive person, so why would I go onto a work phone call and just start having a go at someone whose job I don't actually know how to do?
Yeah,
it's unreasonable. It's an unreasonable expectation. But secondly, just be respectful, and we ask the questions, and sometimes we get the answers we want, sometimes we don't, and that's
the thing, isn't it?
The way of the world, really.
The problem isn't the question; it's the answer that you guys get, which then is the answer we as fans perhaps don't like. But nothing you can do about that.
Looking towards a man who's previously been at that sort of the top of the pyramid at Wednesday and recently took over Derby County, Eric Alonso. Could you shed a bit of light on what Eric Alonso is like as a character? Because he seems to be a bit of a mystery man.
I wish I could. I really wish I could, lads. He's like you say, he's a bit of a ghost, really. It's interesting. He was very open to talking to fans. You know, when he was involved at Wednesday, and people would send him direct messages, and he'd have long chats with them about sort of his hopes for the club and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, we never got to interview him or anything like that. But he's Yeah, he was an interesting character, and he's obviously very determined to get involved in English football because as soon as things broke down with Wednesday and he wasn't able to buy the club, he moved on and he's like, right, well, who can I buy? And he's ended up at
Yeah,
Derby now. I don't know what he's bought them for. But I think it was
£5 million,
interesting.
I think it is. Yeah,
How much, sorry?
5 million. It's not much.
Oh, yeah, it's a bargain, isn't it? We could probably club that together ourselves. But no, it's yeah. I mean, with Eric Alonso, there was a lot said about him coming to Wednesday and trying to buy it from Chansiri, but I mean, there was two main things about that deal. Firstly, Chansiri's not looking to sell. As much as some people might not like him, he's put a lot of money into Wednesday, and he's said many times he's not looking to get out. It's not like he sees it as a club where he's just going to bail all of a sudden. And if he was going to sell, there's no way he's selling for 25-30 bar.
Yeah.
He values the club much higher than that. So
what does he value the club at? Sorry to interrupt, but
no, I don't know
know
figures or anything. No, I just mean it will be substantially more than that, especially given the amount of money that he's put into it.
Yeah.
He'll want him at least if he was to sell, like I say, which I have no indications that he has any intention of selling. But if he was to one day, I'd think he'd at least want to make some of his money back.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, the Eric Alonso thing. I think it's it's the tribalistic nature of football fans to not want to see other people do well. But look at teams like Derby, and it's just I feel the same way about Derby as I do about so many other clubs. And they're a big football club with so much history, and I just. It makes me sad when I think of teams like Derby, and I mean, look at Sunderland, and Sunderland being where they are, and I mean how Sunderland were growing up, and how many people in that city care about that football club, and if it would be a crying shame to see these sort of historic football clubs, and I include Wednesday in that, sort of just fall into mismanagement and down into League One and League Two, like just So. I still wish, I wish Derby all the best with Eric Alonso there, because I just don't want to see clubs like that fall down. What'll happen? Only time will tell with that. Obviously, there's I think quite a lot of apprehension about him joining because there's so little actually known about him. But I was on Radio Derby yesterday, and they asked me a similar thing, and I just said, you've got to roll with it. It'd be unfair to judge the guy not knowing. Just because you don't know something about him doesn't mean you should automatically go to the negative.
Yeah.
When you don't know something about somebody, let them prove themselves, and that's kind of the way I judge it. Is we don't know much about him, but let him do his thing. Time will be the answer as to whether it's the right thing for Derby or not.
Yeah.
Just one final quick question on him. Obviously, he put out many tweets to Wednesday night saying, "I love this," and then a picture of Wembley or something. He's done the same about Derby. I've seen about the good times will return. Perhaps it's the cynic in me, but was his offer for Wednesday ever anything that could have really gone anywhere, or was it more just a publicity stunt in terms of making stirring that pot a little bit more?
We'll never know.
Yeah.
I know it's not the sort of answer that you want from me, but it is literally a case of, unless he says otherwise, we'll never know. And I think it's more a case of he did want to buy Sheffield Wednesday, because he wouldn't have been involved to the level that he was if he didn't want to. That's the long and short of it for me. But it didn't happen for whatever reason, and now he moved on to someone else, just like any of us would do. If I want to buy a pair of trainers and can't afford that pair of trainers, no matter how much I like them, I'm going to go buy some cheaper ones, and then I like those trainers just as much. Do you know what I mean? That's just the nature of anyone. It's just the nature of the beast, really. And I've seen a lot of people sort of saying, but you were saying this about Wednesday, but You know, if he's an ambitious person, then teams like Sheffield Wednesday, teams like Derby County, and taking them back to, you know, the eras of yesteryear, then it's a big thing to try and achieve. And I wish him all the best, and I just hope that at some point Wednesday can get back in the Premier League, because I'd like my dad to see us back in the Premier League before he runs out of time.
Yeah.
So obviously you've covered every Sheffield Wednesday match this season. On a more broader scale, what teams have you been impressed by in the Championship this season?
Brentford were ridiculous.
Yeah.
They've dropped off a little bit now, but yeah, Evan Toney's he's a monster. Like,
yeah,
his knack of being in the right place at the right time is just it's remarkable. Obviously, Norwich are ridiculous as well. Norwich, the interesting thing with Norwich, I thought we were saying there about how we did all right against Norwich, and I thought we did. You know, I thought we matched, for the most part, we matched one of the best teams in the league, and if not the best team in the league. They've just got that bit of quality, and I mean, their winner just kind of summed it up.
Cantwell goal was
It was magnificent.
wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that's
Just the speed at which Emi Buendia had been almost non-existent in that game. He's not a Championship footballer for a start. He should not be in this division.
He's a Champions League player, really. Like,
yeah,
it's
no,
mental.
he's yeah. They're punching well above the weight at Norwich with him in the side. I mean, to be fair, you could probably say that with Pukki and Cantwell as well. They've got a fair few players there that aren't Championship footballers, and same with Brentford, really. But with that Norwich game, the winner, the way that Josh Windass tried to break, Emi Buendia tackled him, picked his pass to perfection, and Todd Cantwell didn't just score. He could not have put it in a more perfect place, and the finishing ability from and Pukki's goal was just perfectly placed as well. And they're just a side that are just too good for this league. I don't know if they'll end up yo-yoing. I don't know if they'll go up and they're going to struggle again. But for this league, they're just too good.
We had the same when we played them at Carrow Road. It was like both teams were just toe to toe for the entire game. Then Buendia just scored an absolute screamer to make it 1-0, and that's it. They just have that bit of class, you know, that wins them games.
Yeah, like I said, I think those are the two teams that have really impressed me. Interesting looking at the league, because you base it all on your experiences, don't you? You base it on the games that you see, and you know, like with Watford, for instance. Watford are flying at the minute, up, you know, pushing for promotion. But I wasn't particularly impressed with either of the games we played against them.
Yeah, same here. They weren't very good against Barnsley. I think there's a lot of teams this season that are not in false positions, because the old trope goes the league table doesn't lie, but it's been a strange year in terms of results, hasn't it?
It's been very weird, and I think I think I probably speak for a lot of football fans where we just want to see the back of this season now, because it's just been horrible. Like,
I want it to continue forever.
Gonna say, speak for yourself.
I just mean in terms of it. I know, like with teams like Barnsley, obviously you're batting a little bit above where you thought you were going to be and stuff. So that's really nice. But I mean, how bad would it be if you were to get to the playoff final and you weren't able to go? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
it'd be horrible.
It's just after all the years of watching Barnsley battle, to have to miss the year that promotion's on the cards. I just think it's all really sad. And for me, the sooner, and I'm not just saying this because we've been horrible, but I just, like I say, I just want to see the end of it so we can sort of get back to what football is. Because, and I know I've said, you know, people of early doors especially were saying you're so lucky to be going to games and stuff, and it was nice at first. You feel like you're part of this kind of exclusive club, you know, like you go into games and not many people can go, and you feel like, oh, look at me, I'm a bit special. Then after like 5 or 6 games, it's just like you're going to glorified under-23 matches, and you know there's no atmosphere there. It just feels just feels soulless. That's the best way I can describe it, really. I know the old cliche of football is nothing without fans, but it is 100% true, because it just almost feels like it means nothing. There's, I mean, that Bournemouth game, for instance, if they're doing fans there, it's a long trip down to Bournemouth on a Tuesday night. It's absolutely freezing. It's raining. But a man sent off, giving a penalty away, and then Jordan Rhodes pops up in the 93rd minute to score a winner against a team that's meant to be probably winning the league. And then it's just my little whiny voice on the on the video doing a little cheer on my own. It's really sad. But yeah, it's been an interesting season from my perspective, and I'm glad that in some ways I've sort of been here to cover it, because it's been, I don't think we'll ever get anything like this again. So sort of thing that you tell people about in 30, 40 years time. But going back to what you were originally saying, it's just been really weird. Like, results have been really strange, because there's no fan there's no fan engagement there to sort of drag the ball in. You look at that Wednesday Barnsley game. If Oakwell's packed out and it's 2-1,
I think we finished that 2-2. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that the fans kind of drag it in, because it builds, and I feel the same way about Wednesday against Norwich, for instance. When Wednesday is 2-1 at Norwich and had a little bit of a push towards the end of it, you just got to back him a bit more when there's people behind the cop trying to drag the ball in and stuff. And it's just been a year when so little has actually made any sense, really.
Yeah, sort of final question from me, Joe. Which ground, I mean, this might have been limited because of COVID, but which ground would you say has the best press food?
Don't know, mate, because this is the worst part of this entire job.
Yeah.
I don't know, because there's been none. I haven't had any press food anywhere, and it's
shocking,
devastating. Because Alex and Dom are always telling me this place has got amazing press food. We're looking forward to going here next season, because these guys do a good job. Apparently, even Wednesday, like, even though it's obviously home games, like, apparently Wednesday's press food's really good. But I wouldn't be able to tell you, because I spend all my time outside, freezing my arse off with my own flask of Bovril, and that's about it. Yeah, I mean, that is. This is the most animated I've been about any question you've given me, because I feel very passionately about it. Because I got told about a lot of places in the press food that they do, and I haven't been able to experience it at all.
Are there any particular places you're looking forward to going to that you've heard about from maybe Alex or Dom?
What from a press food perspective?
Yeah, from a food perspective.
What has this gone to?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember. Apparently, Norwich is really good.
Yeah.
I tell you where was actually good, and I'm not just saying this.
Yeah.
Barnsley. When we went to Barnsley, they gave us a little, like like when you used to go to parties as a kid, and they'd give you like a party bag with sweets in it.
Yeah.
Barnsley did that, and I was delighted.
That was quality.
I got a Kit Kat. I got a Kit Kat, some Skittles, and a couple of lollipops, and I was absolutely delighted with that.
We won't be able to
shout out to Barnsley for the party bag, because more teams need to give me lollies. It would have been better if they'd gone Chupa Chups, just for for an authenticity perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's yeah, but no, it's like I say, for me, Norwich is meant to be really good. Apparently Wickham are good as well, but obviously Wickham, I mean, we'll be in League One with them next season, so that's not a problem. I'll get to try that out next year.
Yeah.
Be a disgrace if Norwich wasn't good, considering Delia Smith owns them.
Yeah, I do like this idea that it's just her. Maybe
Quality. Well, I think we've covered everything we wanted to and more in that one. Thanks, Joe, for coming on, because that is seriously probably up there with our best episodes yet.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
You have some really good insight.
I'm just pleased to be talking to people again. To be honest, I've become a bit of a hermit. I go to games, sit on a train on my own, come back, and then I sit and write about how bad Wednesday have been, and that is every day of my life now.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. So please do like the video on YouTube if you're listening on YouTube. Subscribe. Follow us on Spotify and Apple. And if you are on Apple, please do give us a 5-star review. It really does help us out. Thanks once again to Joe for coming on, and we'll catch you in the next podcast.
Thanks, guys.